Today, the Fed is going to make their rate decision. We're going to talk about Goldman Sachs expectations. The market's predicting no rate cut. We're also going to talk a little bit about this Iran conflict. But let's start here. Dominant Chinese makers of Bitcoin mining machines set up US production to beat tariffs. Some of the top companies that make Bitcoin mining machines are planning to move to the US to circumvent these tariffs. And 3 Chinese firms control more than 90% of the mining rig market. Bitmain, Canaan, and MicroBT total up this 90%. Bitmain, which is the biggest of those 3 by sales, already started US production of mining rigs in December, whereas Canaan started trial production in the US with the aim of avoiding tariffs after the April 2 Liberation Day. MicroBT, which is the 3rd largest, is actively implementing a localization strategy in the US to avoid the impact of tariffs. The rationale is to try to reduce the cost for both us and our customers. Now, while these Chinese Bitcoin mining firms are working on establishing US bases, the US miners will still have to buy rigs from China, possibly getting hit by higher import costs. Now, I do want to quickly bring up Bitcoin and mention that we are holding here at the 50 MA. If this breaks, we're likely to test this 1015 area, but so far so good. We have been utilizing the 50 MA as a support. Breaking the 50 MA could be a pivot point that brings us to lower levels, but so far so good. And as a side note, this is the longest amount of time that Bitcoin's ever held over $100,000. If we do break our 50 MA here, hopefully the psychological 100,000 will hold us up. And if Bitcoin is to break 100K, that would be a fantastic time to accumulate some more. Now, looking at the Fed meeting probabilities for today, it is very unlikely that we're getting a rate cut. It is a 99.9% chance the market sees no rate cut, and still a very, very low chance of a rate cut in the following meeting. Now, I'll leave this down below for you guys, but this is Goldman Sachs and what they expect from the FOMC today. They also highlight no policy change. The Fed is expected to stay on hold. Goldman Sachs sees the first rate cut in December, followed by 2 more cuts in 2026. And they cite that peak summer tariff effects on inflation will be too fresh for a cut earlier in the year, such as in September, for example. And they expect the June FOMC to hold rates steady, project a cautious, gradual easing path beginning in December. And while the SEP adjustments may suggest a modest deterioration in the 2025 outlook, the Fed will avoid bold moves and emphasize ongoing uncertainty. Now, by the time you guys watch this, maybe the Fed meeting is already out. Let me know what you expect for rate cuts. Is Goldman Sachs right and we're only getting 1 cut around December? Or is the Fed watch tool more accurate? PCE, PPI, and CPI are easing towards 2%, getting very, very close. A small tick down for all 3 would bring the Fed a much more higher probability of being able to cut, especially if we see unemployment tick up, which is expected from Goldman Sachs later this year. Now, we do have news of another company investing into Bitcoin. This is a very risky company, and we may see more like this as a kind of a lifeline for these companies that have been suffering multiple reverse splits, are unprofitable, and are basically completely not worth touching. This Prenetics company has announced plans to establish a Bitcoin treasury. This stock has dropped 94% since its debut in 2022. After this 1 to 15 reverse split, these are not good. Regular splits are good, reverse splits are not. They announced a $20 million purchase of Bitcoin. They see Bitcoin as a way to get out of their situation. And we will see more and more companies turn into Bitcoin that are in this type of situation where they're just reverse splitting, burning cash. They're basically zombie companies. Even pre-revenue companies may do this. If we see these companies doing this and their stock rallies in response to it, we will see more follow suit. It will be a domino effect. The company hasn't reported a profit since going public. Their only hope is essentially this Bitcoin treasury idea, a way to see the stock price pump and for this company to dilute more shareholders. Now, we do have an article here talking about Bitcoin and crypto falling as Trump says Iran's leader is an easy target. But after saying he was an easy target, he also goes on to say we are not going to take him out. And I'm not talking about dating, at least not for now. Iran is going to remain our enemy because they are Israel's enemy. And I want to turn your attention to one of Trump's biggest donors after SpaceX and a banker, Timothy Mellon. This is the Adelson clinic, Miriam Adelson, who has been in the White House. And there's even clips of Trump saying no one has been to the White House more than her. I'll leave this article down below for you guys if you're interested in some of the things going on. But here is her in the White House, and she's basically pushing for the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, among some other things that she's doing. In my opinion, there are some issues with this IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. For one, you can't make allegations, you can't use your free speech to say that they control parts of the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. And by they, I mean these people. You also can't accuse them of being more loyal to Israel than to the interests of their own nations. There are now 45 countries, 1,266 entities, 37 state governments, along with 98 city and country governments, all adopting this definition. I think Thomas Massie makes some fantastic points here on why this is a problem. There's the potential for misuse. Codifying the IHRA definition into law could be used to silence critics of the Israeli government policies and actions. This also blurs the line between anti-Semitism and legitimate criticism on policies. Now, I'll leave all that down below for you if you're interested in going down the rabbit hole into figuring out why, one major reason why we're always at odds with Iran. There was an interview with Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz where Ted Cruz was blaming one of the assassination attempts on Iran, when there's a lot of signs pointing to that individual being more in ties with Ukraine. I just think they're painting an interesting narrative. But like I said, links will be down below if you want to read up on some of this. We do have news that the Senate passes a historic stablecoin bill, and this was on Tuesday. They passed the Genius Act, which is a bill that sets the first federal standards for stablecoins. Now, it does still have to pass the House, and this Genius Act initially was thought to be a very easy crypto bill to pass, but it has faced some delays, difficulties, a previous failure to reach the Senate floor. But hey, this is the first step at least, and they are making some progress. But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys. If you're watching this and the FOMC has already released, let me know what your major takeaways are. How are you feeling about this Iran conflict? Anyways, I appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.